Good morning, everyone. We're about to study Eiruvin, page 12, and I want to welcome all the new faces in the class.
Rabbi, why we have to have a sacrificial offering? What that mean?
You mean to say the Torah reading of this Shabbat and last Shabbat? Well, in short, it's not a subject that we focus today, but just to give you the answer, there is a Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim, in the Guide for the Perplexed, chapter 32. So the Rambam there discusses the whole issue of the sacrificial offering, the purpose of the offering, and he mainly said that it's based on the idea that in those days it was other nations that worship different idols, different animals. You read in the Torah about the Egyptians that used to have a sheep and other animals that they worship. It was Kasdiyim, another nation that used to worship animals. And there is a Gemara in the Talmud Tractate Sanhedrin, page 102. There is a fascinating story about Menashe. It was one of the Jewish kings that did a lot of bad things, a lot of evil acts. And the Talmud said it was a discussion among the rabbis, and they talk about his bad behavior, etc. So that rabbi that talked against Menashe, Menashe appeared to him in a dream that night, and he said to him, "How dare you to talk about me?" And the rabbi said to him, "You worship idols, and you brought idols to the temple. You read it in the Tanakh." And Menashe responded and he said, "Well, if you live in my time and you have this Yetzer Hara, this evil inclination to worship idol, you will not be like me, that I just walk and wear long garments in order to walk slowly to worship idol. You will rush to worship idol." The rabbis tells us that they made a special prayer, community prayer for a long time, and as a result, they in a way from heaven they help them to abrogate this type of desire to worship idols. So in short, what the Rambam tried to tell us is that because it was a tremendous desire to worship idols in those years, and it particularly applied to certain animals, so therefore we are commanded to purposely take those animals and sacrifice them to show that there is no other God but our God. But that's just one phase to understand this. For sure in another time we'll discuss further. The subject of today is the page 12 in Tractate Eiruvin. We are 23 lines from the top of the page. Amar Rav Sheshet, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav. מודים חכמים לרבי אליעזר בפסי חצר. So here we have chatzer, we have yard, and we explained yesterday that they need to have the two lines. So they said even that they disagree in regard to make mavoi kasher, and they require only one post, one lechi. They agreed when they come to a yard that if one of the corner of the yard become open, so they need two pasim, two lechis in each side, either to Reshut Harabim, to public domain, or to Carmelit. So in order to allow carry, you need to have two pasim, two lechis in both sides. ורב נחמן אמר, הלכה כרבי אליעזר בפסי חצר. Rav Nachman said halacha is according to Rabbi Eliezer that regard to upright board of wall that required in a courtyard. So it means that the halacha is that you need to have shne pasim, two pasim. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, man modim, who is the Tana that agree with Rabbi Eliezer? Who go that way? They said Rabbi. Rabbi is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. That what did he say? He said halacha. He said that the halacha, according to Rabbi Eliezer, in a yard, Michlal de Pligi. It means when you say that you follow halacha in one way, it means that there is a disputation and there are those who disagree. Man paligale, who is the one who disagreed? Rabbanan, the sages. What did they say? They said that it's enough to have one pass. The Tanya. Chatzer niteret bepas echad. Rabbi Omer b'shnei pasim. In a courtyard that was breached into a public domain, with the width of the breach not exceeding 10 cubits, it is permitted to carry if one upright board remains in one side of the breach. Now Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, Rabbi, said that it's permitted in one condition, only if there remain two upright boards. So Tosfot here asked that the yard is a language of pas, of that, and mavoy is a language of lechi, of a post. Anyway, you have time, you read the Tosfot here. Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chatzer tzricha shnei pasim. A courtyard, you need to have two upright board of wall on either side of the breach. That's the Rebbe's opinion. So, in other words, that's the way to make it hekel, because you have two boards on each side. Amar le Rabbi Zera le Rabbi Asi, mi amar Rabbi Yochanan hachi. You're going to tell me that that's what Rabbi Yochanan said. Ve'atu de amart mishne Rabbi Yochanan. You, meaning Rabbi Asi, you said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, pasei chatzer tzrichin sheyehe behem arba'a. You told me that in a yard, the board in a courtyard must be 4 handbreadths wide. So v'chi teima, if you're going to tell me that there is a contradiction between the two statements, and Rabbi Yochanan require arba'a, the 4 handbreadths, mikan ve'arba'a mikan, 4 handbreadths in each side. Ve'atane Rav Ada bar Ravimi kamei de Rabbi Chanina, ve'amre le kamei de Rabbi Chanina bar Papi. So that's what the Gemara said further in page 92. So over there they talk about Chatzer Gdola, the large yard, Shenifretza, that it's open to Chatzer Ktana. That's what we discussed also in page 9b. So over there we said that the small one, the Ktana, it's 10, and the Gdola, it's 11. So if the board that divided between the two fall down, still allowed to carry it. And we said Ktana be'eser, 10, Ugdola be'achatesre, which means that if the small one have 10 and the large one, it's larger in 1 amma, you can carry it in the large one. So it can be that Rabbi Yochanan require to have 2 boards in each of these 4 handbreadths. So kis salik Rabbi Zera miyamei. When Rabbi Zera came from the water, coming from the water is a metaphor. It means that he came from a long journey, Ritva said, long traveling by boat. Persha That's the way he explained. Beruach achat be'arba'a. He said if it's a one side of the yard, if there is an upright board in only one direction, so it has to be 4 handbreadth. Mishtei ruchot, if there are 2 upright board in 2 directions, so b'mashu lechan u'mashu lechan. There is any amount here on one side and any amount here on the other side. Ve'adetane Ada Baravdimi, Rabada Baravdimi, Rabihi, which means the brighter that Rav Ada Baravimi said that you have to have 2 boards, each of them of 3 handbreadth. Rabihi, he holds the same as Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, that the yard needs to have 2 pasim. Vesavala Rabbi Yossi, and he also holds the same as Rabbi Yossi, who said that a side post must be at least 3 handbreadths wide. So what we derive from that? That the 2 upright boards together has to be together 6 handbreadths. So Tosfot here commented and he said that this is according to the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan, not lo kerabanan ela kerebi, not according to the sages but according to Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Chatzer niteret bepas echad, that the yard, it's enough to use, permitted to upright board of the wall remain at one side of the breach. Amar le Rabbaye le Rav Yosef, Mi amar Shmuel achi? Did Shmuel say this? Ve'ha amar le Shmuel Rav Chananya bar Shila, at lo ta'avid uvda. He said that you must not perform an action, which means issue a ruling to permit carrying in the breached courtyard, ela o berov dofen o b'shnei pasim, unless they remain standing either the majority of the wall or 2 upright board on either side of the breach. So it means that Shmuel allow only by one board. Amar le Rav Yosef said to Abaye, Ve'ana lo yadana. I do not know how to respond to this contradiction in the opinion of Shmuel. The only one thing I know for sure, the uvda hava bedura de ra'avata uleshon yam nichnas lechatzer hava. So here, I'd like to use this picture because it's very helpful. He said, you see this picture? Everyone see it?
Yeah.
Okay. So he said here, this is the place and this is the water. You see here the yard, the water come into the yard. And they ask Rabbi Yehuda what to do, and he require 1 board in one side in order to carry. And he require only 1 leg. Amar le לשון ים כאמרת, קלו שהקלו חכמים במים. So this is some leniency that the sages made in a private domain. You see here, imagine that they have someone here, they need to pull up the water, so they allow to use this a hanging mechitza, hanging petition, only if it's applied to water, make it a private domain. But other than that, they don't do it. They not allow it. If you have this petition hanging, so do we allow that to carry? Especially if it's a carrying a rune. Churva is like a place that rune. So אמר לי, אין מחיצה תלויה מטרת אלא במים, קלו שהקלו חכמים. this suspended petition, it's a leniency that the sages allowed, but it's only in case involved in water. All the other cases, it's different story. So they not require properly constructed petition. They enough to make something that it's much inferior. Mikol makom kashya. So anyway, so it's still difficult. The contradiction between Shmuel, what he said, כי עטו רב פאפה ורב הונא ברי דרב יהושע מביריו פרשוע. When this rabbi came from the house of Rav, they explain as follows: מרוח אחת ארבעה בארבעה, משתי רוחות במשהו מכאן ומכאן. So they said this, they explain that if the upright board is only in one direction, so they have to have a 4 handbreadth. But when Rabbi Shmuel said that they need to have 2 board, he applied two directions, which means both sides of the breach. It suffices when there is a bit there and bit there, which means that there's a little bit in each side. So therefore, it's not a contradiction, the word of Shmuel. Amar Rav Papa, I kashya li. If I have a difficulty, what Shmuel said, ha kashya li. This is my difficulty. The Amar le Shmuel le Rav Hanania bar Sheila. Shmuel said to Rav Hanania bar Sheila, at lo ta'avid uvda. You must not perform an action which means allowed to carry in a breach courtyard, אלא ברוב דופן או בשני פסים. למה לי רוב דופן? So why do I need most of the wall when we need to fix the entrance in one board? בפס 4 סגי. It's enough to have a board of 4 handbreadths. It's enough. וכי תימא, if you tell me my ברוב דופן בדופן 7, if you tell me that it most of the wall mentioned, it means the wall that is 7 handbreadths wide. ודארבע הווה לי רוב דופן, so that 4 handbreadths constitutes most of the wall. It's also difficult. למה לי 4? Why do we need 4 handbreadths to seal? בשלושה ומשהו סגי, 3 handbreadths and any amount should suffice. דהה אמר רב אחלי ואיתם הרב יחיאל, because Rav Achlai said name of Rav Yechiel. So he said ad 4, that the narrow alleyway has to be up to 4 handbreadths wide, require nothing at all. So why Shmuel require most of the board, the side, the dofen? Ibait Eima, you may said kan bechatzer. According to Shmuel, we talk about yard. Kan b'mavoy, and over there they talk about the alleyway. So when it's come to an entrance of mavoy, Rav Achlai is more lenient that if it's less than 4 handbreadth, you do not need to have any fixing, any repair, but not at the entrance of the yard, because in the entrance of the yard you have to be more scrupulous than the other. So therefore Shmuel hold that it's not enough to have 3 and a little more. You need to have 1 board that sealed the whole dofen, or 2 board in each side. Tanu Rabbanan, לשון ים הנכנס לחצר. The sages taught if a narrow inlet of the sea that enter into a courtyard. okay, here is the water, and it's entered to a courtyard. People here who live on the bay, Edgewater, Savannah Park, all this area of the water around us, I think they understand it better. Look what happened. This is the part. So let's first read the Gemara. So they said, אין ממלאים ימינו בשבת, אלא אם יש לו מחיצה גבוה 10 טפחים. במה דברים אומרים שפרצתו ביותר מ10, אבל 10 אין צריך כלום. So he said that this is the water part. The petition is coming around. Now, here it's exceeded more than 10 cubits. And this is the petition. So this is the condition where the breach through which the water enter is more than 10 cubits wide. That's what require. But if it's less, you don't have anything. There's no requirement. It's only if exceeded more than 10 cubits. And memalehu de lo memalinan. So they said one may not fill water from the inlet because that could involve carried from where? How this called? This called Carmelite, right?
Carmelite, yeah.
So it's carrying from Carmelite into a private domain, right? So that's you can do. But if in the courtyard itself, okay, if the courtyard itself, so that's a different story. One may indeed carry. הטלטול למטלטלים והנפרצה חצר במלואה למקום האסור לה. So basically the yard is a breach more than 10 cubit into a place that is prohibited. That's the part that it's open. So since we have an issue of carrying from the inlet, so therefore they say that it should be prohibited to carry in the courtyard itself. So we now turn the page to 12b. The Gemara responded, Hacha b'maya skinan. So here we're dealing with what? The itle gidude. So Rashi explains that שנשאר מן הפרצה ברוחב 10 אבל הים כיסהו. If you look carefully, you see the reflection on the water, and you see something under the water. So it means that you have under the water the gidude, the foundation. Do you see it?
Mm-hmm.
It's clear?
Yes.
So because you have that, so then it's a whole, put a whole new picture of how it's come in. So meaning that this petition is have the 10 handbreadth, but the water cover them.
Mm-hmm.
So they considering some type of petition, and therefore that make it available to carry, but not by the water, to change it to a private domain and make it part of the petition.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's in one hand it's considering some type of Carmelite, but since they have the foundation on the water, it's just covered by the water, so therefore you treat it differently. Tosfot here Dibur Matchil Hacha, and the Rashba and the Ritva go at length to explain that basically that petition divided the two sections of the water, this petition. Yeah. Anyway, Amar Rav Yehuda, Mavoi shelo nishtatfu bo, which means if you have a situation that you have an alleyway, but the people who live did not participate in the process of making the Eruv. So what do? Im ichshiro belechi, if you put a post in one side, hazorek letocho, if someone throw an item inside from public domain, so chayav, he needs to bring a sin offering because it's considering petition, which is post. It's a petition. It's some type of mechitza, separation. Because the post, what did he do? He make the alleyway a private domain. Hichshiro bekora, but if he brought a full board there, hazorek letocho patur. If someone throws something from a public domain, he is exempt. Why? Because this board is considering visible. It doesn't have the title of petition. So the Gemara asked, Matkifla Rav Sheshet. Rav Sheshet asked, what we understand, Tama, the reason that he is exempt from throwing this item, de lo nishtatfu bo, because they didn't participate with shitufei mevorot. Ha nishtatfu bo, but if everyone participated in that, afilu ichshiro bekora ana mechayav. So therefore, even he is preparing in this type of board, he also liable for throwing this item. וכי כיכר זאת עושה אותו רשות היחיד או רשות הרבים. You're going to tell me that this loaf of bread changed the domain, והתניא חצרות של רבים. If you have a yards in this development that belong to many people, like you see, for example, in the area of the downtown or Edgewater, you see developments that they have several yards that belongs to several people, which means that all of this need עירובי חצרות in order to carry it from one domain to another. ומבואות שאינם מפולשים, which mean, you remember we talked mefulash, if there is an open in an alleyway in both sides, it's considering mefulash. So if you have mevo'ot that not mefulashim, that it's not open both sides, which means that they have three mechitzot, three partition, and it's open only in one side, like in Hebrew in chet, ben ervo, ben lo ervo, regardless if they participate in an eruv or not, hazorek letochan chayav. If someone throw in, he is liable for sin offering, because the shitufei mevo'ot, it's not carried any different in a sense of making it a domain, and not the way that Rav Yudah said. Ela itmar hache itmar. But if you teach this is the way you should learn it. Amar Rav Yehuda mavoi she'eno ra'ui leshituf. If you have a courtyard that carries not courtyard, I'm sorry, if you have an alleyway, that you have only two petition, which means it's open in both sides, and you have only two petition. So the idea of being participate and not allow to carry because it's not wrapped properly. So he said hichshiro belechi. So if you put a post in one side, hazorek letocho, if someone throw from public domain inside in Shabbat, chayav, he is liable for sin offering, because he hold that shalosh mechitzot deoraita, the three petition, it's a biblical precept that make it, change it to a private domain. So since you tell me that the post, the lechi, is considering as a mechitza, it means that the mavoi carries in a two entrance plus the post, altogether they have three mechitzot, so therefore by the Torah it's considering a private domain. So he said, hichshiro bekora. So if he put this board, hazorek letocho patur. Why? Because this board is just to make it visible. It's not a petition. It's just to people to notice it. So therefore, the alleyway that have these two petitions, it's considering still a public domain and not a private domain. So he said, Alma kasavar, meaning Rabbi Yehuda hold, lechi mishum mechitza, vekora mishum eker. The reason that we require to have a post is in order to have a separation. The reason that we need to have a board, it's in order to make it visible. וכן אמר רבא, לחי משום מחיצה וקורה משום מקרה בסליסי. ורבא אמר, אחד זה ואחד זה מועילים משום מקר. He said, regardless, both of them, it's good as long as it's make it noticeable. It's visible, it's good. So regardless if you use a post or you use the board. Eitivei Rabbi Yaakov bar Rava leRava. Rabbi Yaakov bar Rava asked Rava a question from another Braita. Hazorek lemavoi. If someone take an item on Shabbat and throw it from public domain to an alleyway, yesh lo lechi, if the alleyway has a post in one side, chayav, he needs to bring a sin offering. Ein lo lechi patur, but he doesn't have the post, he's exempt. Why? Because he holds that the lechi is a petition, it's a mechitza. So that's make this alleyway private domain by the Torah, and not like Rava that said that it's only to make it heiker, to make it visible. Hacheke amar, that's what they meant. Eino tzarich ela lechi. He doesn't need only one post to make it okay, as long as it's locked, it closed like the chet in three parts. So they said, hazorek letocho chayav. If someone throw in, he is liable, because remember we said that the minute you have three mechitzot, it's considering a private domain by the Torah. But if it's only mefulash, that they have the two opening in both sides, so lechi vedavar acher, which means you need to have some type of tzurat hapetach, some type of sign of entrance. Hazorek letocho patur, that if someone throw there from a public domain, since it carries only two petition, two sides, so it's not considering a private domain, it's still considering a public domain.
Okay.
Eitivei yater al ken amar Rabbi Yehuda. Furthermore, Rabbi Yehuda said, מי שיש לו שני בתים בשני צידי רשות הרבים, עושה לחי מכאן ולחי מכאן, או קורא מכאן וקורא מכאן, ועושה נותן באמצע. Remember, this is a case that we discussed earlier. If someone has two houses in two sides of a public domain, and remember it was in page 6, you have a house belong to Mr. A, and house across the street belonged to Mr. A, and he wanted to make this a part of the private domain. So they said here he should make one post in each side, and he can carry in the middle, like ונוסף נותן באמצע, is like private domain. אמרו לו, חכמים said to him, מערבין, אין מערבין רשות הרבים בכך. Remember what we said in page 6, you cannot make a public domain a private domain like that. It's not the way. So the Gemara said, so what we learn from that, so that lechi, that post, it's considering a mechitza, a petition, unlike what Rava said. So the Gemara responded, said, Hatam kasavar Rabbi Yehuda shte mechitzot doraita. Over there, Rabbi Yehuda hold that if you have two petitions, it's he said that changed the status and make it private domain by the Torah. So the whole idea of having two posts in both sides is just to make it more recognizable, more visible. That's his opinion. Now, if you remember in page 12, the Gemara said that we need to have, for the yard, we need to have one board that have to have 4 handbreadth, and let me show you the picture. So we said here, let me find the picture. It's here, but anyway, I can't find it now. I have to rush in time. Anyway, so it's not considering a yard in regard to this halachot. אמר רב יהודה אמר רב מבוי שאורכו כרוחבו. If the size of the alleyway, the length and the width is the same side, which means it looks like a square, אינו ניתר בלחי משהו. So you cannot carry inside by having this post in somehow at the entrance of the alleyway, but you need to have a board in the size of 4 handbreadth, the same as we said in the courtyard. אמר רבי חייא בר אשי אמר רב מבוי שאורכו כרוחבו אינו ניתר בקורת טפח. If you have a alleyway that the length is the same as the width, so you cannot have the same board in 1 handbreadth. אמר רבי זרע כמה מכוונן שמעתה דסבי. How precise are the tradition of the sages, of the old sages. And he has said, explain, כיוון דאורכו כרוחבו, since you tell me that the length of the alleyway is the same as the width, so he said, הווה לי חצר, we hold it the same as a courtyard. וחצר אינה ניתרת בלחי וקורה, אלא בפס 4. And the courtyard is not permitted to use only if you have a side post and you have the cross beam. You remember we talked about only if an upright board has a 4 handbreadth. אמר רבי זרע, קשיא לי, הקשיא לי. If I have some difficult to understand, that's the way I have an issue. What's the issue? להווה היי לחי כפס ומשהו ונשתרי. We take this side post and we make it as a upright board in minimum width, and therefore we are allowed to carry within that alleyway the same way as the upright board permit carried in the breach courtyard. Ishtamitete hadamar Rabbi Asi amar Rabbi Yochanan. So he said that that's not right the way he said it, because in a way he's like he escaped Rab Zera. Why? Because he said pasei chatzer, the upright board of a courtyard, צריכין שיהיה בהם 4. They have to have a 4 handbreadth wide. So that's the side post has to have that's the minimum, the side to carry. אמר רב נחמן נקטינן, זהו מבוי שניתר בלחי וקורה. What is the type of alleyway which carrying is permitted by means of side post and cross beam, side post and a cross beam? כל שאורכו יתר הרוחבו. Any whose length is greater than its width. So it means that ubatim v'chazerot ptuchim v'chator, and you have houses and yards that courtyard that open into it. ואיזוהי חצר שאינה ניתרת בלחי וקורה? What type of courtyard carry is not permitted by means of a side post or a cross beam? אלא בפס 4, only by board of 4 handbreadths. Says כל שמרובעת, any courtyard that is מרובע, it's square. So they ask, מרובעת אין עגולה? לא. That purposely said about square, but how about if it's made like in a circle, round? הכי כאמר, אי אורכה יתר על רוחבה, if the length is greater than the width, הווה לי מבוי, it's considering an alleyway. ומבוי, an alleyway, בלחי וקורה הסגיה, a side post and a cross beam is sufficient. ואילה ולחצר, otherwise it's considering a courtyard. וכמה? What's the length that exceeds the width that consider an alleyway? סבר שמואל למימר דאיכא פי 2 ברוחבה. Shmuel said the alleyway, unless its length is double than its width. So Amar le Rav, Hache Amar Chabibi. That's my Chabibi. It's like my uncle. That's my Rav Chia. My uncle said, Afilu b'mashu. Even you have a weed and we have the length, and the length is more than the weed. Only if you have like a very small amount, all the halachot of the alleyway, it's applied to it. Then the Gemara said, Mishum Rabbi Ishmael Amar Talmid Echad. We learned in the Mishnah that a certain disciple said of before Rabbi Akiva in the name of Rabbi Ishmael. Just few lines in page 13. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Al ze ve'al ze nechelku. So we said that Rabbi Akiva hold that that they disagree on this, which means the alleyway less than 4 cubit wide, and about that the alleyway more than 4 cubit wide. Rabbi Akiva Hanu Tanakama. Rabbi Akiva hold the same as the first Tana in the Mishnah, that the whole that Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagree in all cases, regardless to the width of the alleyway. So between them, the halacha stayed Rabbi Achla, and some said Rabbi Yechiel, and it's not finalized, it's not defined. Tanya. So we said Amar Rabbi Akiva, לא אמר רבי ישמעאל דבר זה, לאותו תלמיד אמר דבר זה, והלכה כאותו תלמיד. It's not רבי ישמעאל said it, it's one of the disciples said it, and הלכה go the opinion by the disciple. הגוף הקש שאמר לו, אמר רבי ישמעאל דבר זה, על מה? הלכתה, לית הלכתה כבתיה, ולמה הלכה כאותו תלמיד? The beginning you said that Rabbi Ishmael didn't say it. And you said, but even he didn't say it, halacha is going to according to what he said, and then you said halacha is according to his student. אמר רב יהודה, אמר שמואל, לא אמרה רבי עקיבא אלא לחדד בה התלמידים. So he said it in order to sharpen the mind of the students with his statement, which means he wants to encourage his students, so he wants to hear what they said, so he praised all the students, but he did not actually rule according to his students' point of view. ורב נחמן בר יצחק אמר נראין איתמר. Rabbi Akiva only said only what he appeared by his students, that what he said it looks right, but he doesn't say that halacha it's according to what he said, that the statement of his student is just reasonable, but doesn't say that that's the halacha. First halacha is mavoi pachot me'arba. An alleyway less than 3 handbreadths wide requires nothing added to permit carrying. Some say that even if it's less than 4 handbreadths wide, it's not require any addition to permit carry within it. The first opinion is the Rambam, that he followed the way that the Gemara said, and the halacha follows Shmuel's statement rather than the Rav Achai. That's what the Varina Gaon said. And the second opinion is the Rashba and the Rosh, that maintain that the entrance must be at least 4 handbreadths wide, and that in individual opinion sites in the Gemara is insufficient proof in regard to this case. That's the Magid Mishnah. Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim also said it in 363. Pasei Chaser, upright board of a courtyard. If an entire wall of a courtyard was breached, and the breach was less than 10 cubit wide, the courtyard can be rendered fit for one to carry within it by means of a board 4 handbreadths wide on one side of the breach, or by means of 2 boards of minimal width of both sides of the breach. The halacha is according to the opinion of Rabbi Zera, Rav Papa, Rav Huna, son of Rabbi Yoshua. The same applied to if the section of the wall remains. Carrying is permitted in the courtyard if there is a wall of 4 handbreadths wide on the one side and the wall of 1 handbreadth on the other side, but the Beit Yosef rules that the wall of the entire side can be less than 1 handbreadth wide, and that's Shulchan Aruch Or HaChaim 363. We also discuss a suspended partition, that it's not considering a proper partition, but if it does permit carrying in a courtyard when it's suspended over water, that the entrance of the courtyard, because the sages were lenient in regard to water. That's the Rab said. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 353. Throwing into alleyway, if an alleyway is closed in one side and rendered fit for one to carry within it by a crossbeam, one who throw an object from the public domain into the alleyway is exempt, even though it's a private domain in a sense that is permitted to carry in an alleyway. However, if the alleyway was rendered fit by a side post, the one who throw an object into it is liable. That's the Gemara that maintains that the side post functions as a petition, with the crossbeam functions as a conspicuous matter. The Maggid Mishneh said that the private domain requires 4 petition by Torah law. The Ravad, on the other hand, rules that the petition suffice. So again, the whole discussion is the Rambam Sefer Zmanim Ilchot Shabbat, chapter 17. We also discussed Leshon Yam Hanichnas Lechatzer. We discussed the situation that is the water entered to the yard. So if the sea breaches part of the courtyard wall and penetrate into a courtyard, one is permitted to draw water and carry it in a courtyard so long as the breach is less than 10 cubit. You see it clearly?
Yes.
Wide. However, if the wall is fully breached, or if the breach is more than 10 cubit wide, then one permitted to draw water in the courtyard only, where there are remnant of the wall 10 handbreadth high, even though the remains are covered by water. Still, one may not carry the water from the courtyard into the house unless the proper partition is constructed. That's the Braita said, and that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 356. We also discuss a little bit the idea of Mavoi Shenitar. If you have a case of alleyway whose length is greater than its width, and that the houses and the courtyards opening into it, carrying within it can be permitted only by means of a side post or a crossbeam. That's the Halacha of Rav Nachman, Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 363. And the last Halacha Mitzvah of the today is, we said that sometimes there is a discussion, and you have the students and you have the Rebbe, etc. So the whole discussion of Rabbi Akiva here is Rabbi Akiva intend to say that even he knows that there is no such tradition. Rabbi Ishmael certainly did not make this statement. The student opinion makes sense, is logical. Doesn't mean that that's the final halacha. He just heard them and expresses what they said to show that he is listening and it makes sense, but not to say that that's the final halacha.
Kar tu